Inside Pakistan, its people, its president, its religion, its uncertain future.
The Journal with Keith Morrison.
Good evening. Tonight, a rare documentary report on a troubled country, Pakistan. It's a place of immeasurable strategic importance to the West. Since the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan, the Reagan administration has poured more than $3 billion in military aid into Pakistan. But in the last 8 weeks, the military rule of President Zia Ul Haq has been the focus of violent demonstrations in the streets. Pakistan is now a terribly uneasy confederation of 4 provinces, and the West is watching warily. President Zia, trying to quell the opposition, has promised elections, a promise which has only made things worse. Tonight, God's General, a documentary report on the military, the mullahs, and the growing uprising against President Zia Ul Haq. The Journal's Gavin Hewitt reports.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Pakistan, an Islamic state in the making.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
Over half its 90 million people live off the fruits of the land. Its 36-year history has been dominated by the wealth of the fertile Punjab and an army almost exclusively Punjabi. The home of the president is open to the people. From the highest to the most humble, all on this day can present their grievances. It's an act of open government that belies the fact that Pakistan is a military dictatorship ruled by President Zia Ul Haq. Today, this army general faces his severest challenge. In recent weeks, violent demonstrations have called for his overthrow. His hospitality on this, the Islamic festival of Eid, is presented as the act of a devout Muslim who carries out his duties to the poor and hungry. For the past 6 years, he believes he has saved Pakistan from the chaos of politics. To his opponents, President Zia's Islamic society is a convenient disguise for military rule.
These are the 3 fundamental principles of an Islamic society: freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of action, and freedom of choice of exercising one's own right. These are the basic principles of Islamic society.
Yes, he ostensibly is a Muslim who adheres to all the rituals of Islam. But I say this very candidly, that his conduct has shown that spirit of Islam he has never followed for a day. What is the spirit of Islam? Decency, love of humanity.
Pakistan's popular film industry, a potential battleground of the new Islamic state. The alluring females are anathema to the conservative mullahs, but the clergy's support has been crucial to President Zia's survival, and under him, their influence has grown. Mullahs sit on the film board. Although a screen kiss has never been delivered, the industry fears that even its gentle romances could be threatened.
पिघल गया।
ये क्या कर रहे हैं आप? मायदा टूट जाएगा।
टूट जाएगा।
We are very much distressed by the fact that this is being misused for corrupting the people, mentally, morally, teaching them committing of crime, murders, violence, and all these things are being spread through cinema, through television, through film.
81 by 1.
While the mullahs would place the actresses behind the veil, they would also restrict the role of women in society.
Please.
Why the women have not become rulers in the world? Why women have not become generals in the world? Why women have not become the teachers of mankind in the world? Why women have not become big doctors in the world? Why women have not become big engineers in the world? Everything has been being done by males. What is the reason? There is some reason, some weakness in the female, that they have not become occupied these positions as the men have done.
Some of the more educated women disagree. This rare demonstration in Lahore was against martial law and in support of the movement to overthrow President Zia. The women want democracy because they fear they'll gradually be restricted to their homes. As a protest, it was a hopeless gesture. A few onlookers shouted shame as posters were torn up and the women bundled into police vans. Women's rights carry little appeal in a male-dominated Pakistan. President Zia dismissed the protest as that of 14 women out of 40 million. The authorities, however, are sensitive to such scenes being shown abroad. On a previous occasion, when foreign cameras weren't present, the women were charged at by police, tear-gassed and beaten with wooden canes. Any act of protest in Pakistan takes courage. The women of Lahore all face periods of imprisonment.
In Pakistan, I tell you, the majority of women, and please take my word, majority of the women are for an Islamic order, because that is where their respect lies and that's where their freedom lies.
There are more women in jails today than ever in the history of the subcontinent. People have been lashed. Which Islam says that they should be lashed for saying, expressing your political views, or criticizing government on, very positively criticizing government on issues which are very fundamental, which are very important?
It's not the Islam we are up and it's the interpretation of Islam, which certain people today in Pakistan claim to be the spokesman. They claim to have the monopoly, and they are putting forward this interpretation, and it is against this particular interpretation that all women have organized and are struggling today.
कुरान पाक के 3 हिस्से हैं। एक हिस्सा तो सिर्फ अहकाम खुदावंदी।
Under martial law, the mullahs have won important concessions. Many of the mosques now denounce the present campaign for democracy as anti-Islam. By appeasing the clergy, President Zia has weakened the opposition. At the Badshahi Mosque, the women sit alone as in religious purdah. Under this government, they have been banned from mixing socially at educational institutions. And in the courts, a woman's word is deemed to be worth half that of a man. To the devout, these are the laws of a true Islamic state. The Council for Islamic Ideology would restrict women further, but President Zia has said no. He is adroit in balancing the demands of the mullahs with the need to present a certain image to the West. Although the new Islamic policy towards women has been bitterly opposed by the educated elite, it has been more popular among the poorer sections of society. President Zia told us that he was doubtful whether he could have survived for these 6 years without his new Islamic laws. And his survival is crucial to the success of America's policy in the region. In President Zia, they see a loyal friend and ally. And that's important because of the presence of Soviet troops in neighboring Afghanistan. Pakistan is seen as a frontline state against communism. That front line is the border with Afghanistan, beyond which are 110,000 Soviet troops. To the east lies India, the dominant power in the region, with friendly ties to the Soviet Union and with whom Pakistan has fought 2 wars. It's from Pakistan's northwest frontier that the Afghan guerrillas receive the weapons to confront the Soviet army. The Americans are determined to keep the aid flowing, to make the Soviets pay a heavy price for occupying Afghanistan. But the northwest frontier contains dangers for American policy. It's inhabited by the fiercely independent Pathans with a fragile loyalty to Pakistan. The northwest frontier has remained a land untamed. It is a natural mountain fortress that has enabled its people to resist a succession of invading armies, from the Mughals to the British. Even today in the tribal areas, the police of central government are barely tolerated. Most of these people regard themselves as Pathans rather than Pakistanis, yet they are the custodians of the border. The Pathans are a reminder that Pakistan is a nation artificially glued together. President Zia needs the passive support of the tribesmen for his policy towards Afghanistan. This he has won by largely leaving them alone to indulge in smuggling and drug trafficking. Nazirabad, a model refugee camp for some of the 3 million Afghans who have come to the northwest frontier since 1980. Pakistan has earned considerable respect abroad for its hospitality. But inside Pakistan, the brotherly aid to the Afghan refugees is often resented. We watched some of the refugees construct a permanent mosque. The opposition fears the Afghans are the new Palestinians, a people who will never return home. It would prefer to recognize the Soviet-backed Afghan government. So, if President Zia were to fall, America's policy would be in ruins.
Some are tilling the land, some are plying trucks, some are trading in animals. We have intentionally provided as many job opportunities for old and the young and the women of Afghan refugees, so that they can subsidize their living, because nobody can provide enough money for a family to live just on that dole. We just provide bare minimum means of subsistence. But that does not mean that they're settling down here forever. They all want to go back. You can see in their eyes.
Is this country a place where everybody from outside will come, and we have already enough problems as a result of these influx of people, and more influx, more instability, and more involvement of the refugee elements into the politics of the country, lesser stability. We are merely complicating our own matters of existence of Pakistan.
This is a jirga, a meeting between the political agent of the government and the tribesmen. It is the forum through which problems are discussed. There have been occasional clashes between the tribesmen and the Afghan refugees over water rights and land. This was considered the government problem, which it skillfully avoided by housing the refugees away from the wary tribesmen. But in the past 8 weeks, a new, more serious challenge has emerged elsewhere that has brought with it the direst of warnings.
There's an imminent danger of the breakup of the country. Imminent danger. It's a writing on the wall. As I said earlier, they'll be forcing us. They'll be forcing us to start movements which we dread to start.
In part 2, we will go to Sindh, where much of the province has been in rebellion against the government of President Zia. It is the people from rural Sindh who are leading the movement to overthrow President Zia. Sindhis have a keen sense of their own language and tradition and have a long-standing resentment towards the central government in the Punjab and its largely Punjabi army. Sindh is divided by the river Indus, which brings life to the parched desert soil. This is a feudal society of big landlords and spiritual leaders. Pakistan's last Prime Minister, Ali Bhutto, was a Sindhi. It is not forgotten here that he returned in a coffin, having been hanged by President Zia. 8 weeks ago, when President Zia announced elections for March 1985, the Sindhis rose in protest. They saw in the elections a clever device that would enable Zia's supporters to stand, but which would exclude the old politicians and their banned parties. President Zia, they feared, could well continue in power. Faces lost in worship before the Maktoum of Halle, a landlord but also a living saint with 1 million followers. Even to look on his face, it is said, is to receive blessing. These people are Sufis, an offshoot of Islam, who believe in the mystical power of sainthood. The Maktoum has told them to overthrow the government and restore democracy. It is this network of landed aristocracy and spiritual peers that has sensed the rising anger of Sindhis against deprivation. The protests have received their blessing. The words of the saints have been carried onto the highways of Sindh. This is Pakistan's national highway, which runs through the heart of the province of Sindh. It is the vital economic artery that links the productive north to the ports in the south. In recent weeks, the people of Sindh have taken to blocking the road. On one occasion, we witnessed the felling of a huge tree across the highway, but the material was confiscated by the army. The problem is so serious that many trucks are now traveling in convoy, with heavily armed troops with mounted machine guns. An effigy of President Zia astride a donkey. For 8 weeks, the towns of Sindh have been in uproar, in flagrant violation of martial law. Zia has been called a dog. The flag is carried openly of the now banned People's Party of executed Prime Minister Ali Bhutto. His death is one of the causes of Sindhi fury. But outside the towns of Sindh, the campaign for democracy has drawn lukewarm support. The opposition in Pakistan has once again shown itself to be divided. There is deep suspicion that when Sindhi nationalists call for self-respect, they mean Sindhi self-respect.
It's a question of self-respect, it's a question of honorable participation, it's the question of dignity of citizenship, it's a question of being part and parcel of this country and being recognized as important for the existence of this country.
It is being maneuvered. It is a band of about 150 to 200 bandits which have been released from jail for this very purpose. You know that 2 jails were broken and the worst type of criminals have been brought out for this very purpose. And they are intimidating the people that if you don't do this, if you don't do this, if you don't fly flags of People's Party on your homes, you will be killed and you will be shot dead and your houses will be put to fire and this thing and that thing.
Hashim, Ramzan, Janib, Pirbash.
A litany of the dead, killed in a clash with the army near the town of Sakrand on September the 29th. Since August, the opposition says over 200 people have been killed.
Ramzan, Janib, Pirbash, Aligul, Miro, Mahbub, Urs, Taro.
The villagers took these pictures moments before we arrived. They told us that a number of people, some of them mullahs, had been sitting on the national highway reading the Quran. When the army tried to remove them, the villagers went for their guns and a battle ensued. 28 villagers died, 35 were wounded. Villagers claim 25 army casualties. Inside Pakistan, the details of the event were suppressed. Embittered Sindhis are now talking of fighting not so much for democracy, but for a Sindhi motherland against the Punjabi army.
This is our motherland. We fight for our motherland. We fight with soldiers of Punjab. We fight with majority province of Punjab.
This man was shot and wounded while demonstrating. He lies in hospital, chained to his bed. Although such men are under police guard, we managed to get inside Surgical Ward 2 at Nawabshah Hospital and snatch these pictures. The men were injured when the security forces opened fire on August the 16th at the town of Nashara Feroz. They are wearing chains because they will later face a military court. They are likely to be flogged and imprisoned. Doctors told us that in a nearby ward were the 35 men who had been wounded near Sakrand on September the 29th. They too are chained to their beds.
All boxes are repaired and checked.
Despite the protests, the military government is pursuing its own election timetable, first with local polls and then with national elections involving acceptable politicians. Zia's generals hope the present politicians will discredit themselves by infighting and that a new breed of patriotic Muslims will replace them. Whether they will succeed in building an organized democracy depends largely on whether the present disturbances spread both beyond the province of Sindh and into the big cities. the Karachi Bar Association holds an illegal meeting. To address them, Maulana Shah Noorani, a mullah of great influence in the southern cities of Karachi and Hyderabad.
You are therefore advised not to invite or allow any political leader to address the Karachi Bar on the political aspects, failing which action will be taken against you and the politician who will address the bar under the martial law regulations and ordinances. Ye hai Abdul Aziz Ashrafi Sahab, DC South or SDM.
As Noorani rises to speak, martial law regulations are defiantly torn up.
I am in a struggle. I am in a struggle. My party also is in a struggle because we are supporting the demand for the restoration of democracy, the restoration of martial law.
Despite Maulana Shah Noorani's pledge of support, he, like many others, continues to sit on the fence. He won't call his supporters out unless he is certain that the movement to replace President Zia will succeed. Which way the mullahs decide could be decisive. Many continue to take the president's side in denouncing the movement for democracy.
If you create lawlessness, if you create commotions, if you create this violence, make people commit violence, how can you establish democracy in Pakistan?
In a military regime, you can only overthrow a military regime by the military personnel. And I think if I have to be replaced, I have to be replaced by a military personality because you can't do anything else otherwise. This is what I meant. I said people do not realize that to overthrow a military regime, you have to use a military instrument. And if the military instrument is already supporting one individual, you can't bring in another one.
You're saying it can't be done by popular agitation?
It's possible. It's not possible.
So how united is the army? Pakistan is ruled by a military council composed of the heads of the armed services. President Zia could not survive without its support. The opposition believes that any realistic move to replace President Zia must come from within the council. They suggest that General Iqbal Khan, chairman of the Joint Chiefs and a former governor of Sindh province, might be trusted to negotiate a return to democracy. But such cracks show no sign of appearing in the ranks of the council. The armed forces at present are solidly behind Zia. President Zia, in the short term, appears secure, both from the army and the quarrelsome opposition. But his image as a strong Muslim statesman has been tarnished. Pakistan's relationship with India, which had shown signs of improving, has again gone frosty. Its tightly controlled press has alleged that Mrs. Gandhi of India has been backing the Sindhis with arms and money. President Zia has been swift to see foreign hands at work inside his country.
There's a very strong underground movement for the subversion in Pakistan, in which the Soviet hand is there, and we have no proof as yet, but I do not leave out the possibility of India not being involved into this.
Well, it's for the people of Pakistan to decide what they want in their countries. We do not believe in interference. Naturally, we ourselves are committed to democracy in our country, and if we believe it's a good thing for us, we believe it's a good thing for others.
Oh, she said, we cannot sit down idle and be unconcerned of what is happening inside Pakistan today, in Sindh particularly. She had no bloody business to say so. When I do not say what's happening inside India.
Within Sindh's shadows lurk the fears for Pakistan's long-term stability. Many Sindhis feel betrayed that the rest of the country hasn't followed them. The talk at night is of independence. In that event, other provinces might follow the path of the Sindhis.
If this junta today does not accede to the demands of the agitation today, and I think they may be able to suppress it for the time being, but that will be a very, very dangerous phenomenon. Because that suppression, after that, the agitation would be for the disintegration of country, and at least we are really and genuinely afraid for the unity of the country.
I am fully convinced that Pakistan has come to stay, and Pakistan inshallah will stay by the grace of God. It will be a strong country. This particular dissension at the present moment is a momentary event in the life of any political government, and it will fade away. I do not say it will fade away tomorrow. It will perhaps keep on simmering and for a long time to come, but it's a movement or an activity by a faction, a very small group of frustrated politicians, nobody else.
The movement for restoration of democracy today, we feel they are being almost forced at a gunpoint to convert this movement into a separatist movement, as simple as that. This junta, this junta is forcing the people.
That's the threat then. But for the moment, the opposition has yet to show it has sufficient support to seriously challenge President Zia. It has, however, made Washington's Asian ally appear much more vulnerable. For the Journal, this is Gavin Hewitt in Pakistan, a country whose generals and opposition seem destined for further confrontation.
God's General was produced by Neville Bolt. We'll be back after this.